Episode 2, The People versus the Platform, Why China Can't Let the Losers Go. Last episode, we pulled apart the illusion that America is one single country. We found three Americas stacked on top of each other. Imperial America, powerful as ever. Communal America, quietly decaying. And disposable America, expanding in the shadows. We ended with a question that reveals more about China than it does about America. Why do we, as Chinese, find it so viscerally unbearable to see ordinary people discarded by their system? Why does the sight of homeless encampments and medical bankruptcies and entire communities left to rot strike us not just as a policy failure, but as something almost civilizationally wrong? The answer is not that we are kinder people. It's that we operate on a different political operating system. And to understand that system, we have to talk about a word that sounds simple but is enormously heavy: the people. Welcome back to the America Mirror. I'm your host. This is episode 2, The People versus the Platform. Let's start by being fair to America. It's not that America has never tried to be a country that takes care of its own. It has. There was the Progressive Era, pushing back against monopolies and urban poverty. There was the New Deal, building a social safety net and giving workers real power. Labor unions once gave blue-collar Americans dignity, wages, benefits, a path to the middle class. Martin Luther King Jr. We remember his fight for racial equality, but in his final years, he launched the Poor People's Campaign, trying to unite Black people, poor whites, Latinos, Native Americans, low-wage workers into a broad coalition of the left behind. Even today, figures like Bernie Sanders keep trying to reframe the whole country as the 1% versus the 99%. These efforts were real. They were fought for, and they did make life better for millions. But here is the uncomfortable truth. None of them ever became America's permanent, primary operating system. They came in waves, and every time, the tide went back out. The capital platform logic absorbed them, digested them, neutralized them, through competition, through identity politics, through legal procedures, through foundation grants, through media narratives, through market concessions. The wave recedes, and the underlying system remains. Individual, rights, market, capital, contract, competition, selection. America is very good at talking about rights, but rights and the people are not the same thing. Rights protect individual boundaries. The people emphasizes collective responsibility. America protects the individual brilliantly, but it struggles to form what China means by the people, not just a population, not just citizens, not just voters, not just consumers. A political ethical subject. The idea that the state's legitimacy is accountable to them, that their improvement in life is the proof of the nation's strength, that they are not pure market units or cost items or data points. They are the center of the national story. So when American society has problems, they are easily broken apart. Medical suffering becomes an insurance problem, a hospital billing issue, a pharmaceutical company practice, a state policy, an individual choice. Educational suffering becomes tuition costs, university fees, choice of major, personal investment. Public safety becomes gun laws, policing tactics, race, neighborhood conditions, mental health. Each explanation is partly true, but together they accomplish something very effective: the fragmentation of collective pain. And once pain is fragmented, the people, as a unified force, becomes nearly impossible to form. This is one of the deep secrets of American stability. The system is not without suffering. There is immense suffering, but it is extraordinarily good at dispersing it. And this is where a comparison with India and China becomes so revealing. It's something the original essay captured brilliantly, and I want to walk through it with you. India's civilizational genius, in a strange way, is explaining suffering. Reality for many has been unbearably harsh for millennia. So religion, reincarnation, caste, karma, they provide an explanation. You are not suffering randomly. You have a place in a cosmic order. Your suffering has meaning. The underlying logic is, suffering can be explained away. America doesn't bother much with explaining suffering. It disperses it. Medical pain is scattered into insurance forms and provider networks. Poverty is scattered into personal laziness, drugs, family breakdown, educational failure, immigration status, local governance, identity politics. Each pain is real, but each is isolated. After isolation, it is hard to form a common enemy. This is not a conspiracy. It's a property of a highly individualized, marketized society. The system naturally atomizes grievances. And then there is China. China does not explain suffering away like India, and it does not disperse suffering like America. The Chinese reflex is, this suffering must be handled. Not handled perfectly. There is formalism, there is bureaucracy, there are failures. But the gut reaction is, shouldn't this be governed? Shouldn't there be a safety net? Shouldn't we prevent people from falling off the edge entirely? This is not because the Chinese Communist Party is just nicer. It's because of a brutal history lesson that has been carved into the bones of every Chinese ruler for over 2,000 years. If a regime does not care for the bottom will eventually rise up and overthrow it. Let me take you back. The first great peasant rebellion in Chinese history that actually toppled a dynasty was led by Chun Sheng and Wu Guang in 209 BC. Their cry was simple: "Are kings and nobles born better than us?" From that moment on, Chinese civilization carried a terrifying political gene. The bottom is not eternally silent. They are not beasts of burden. If they cannot survive, they will organize. Most of the great dynastic collapses in Chinese history follow the same pattern. Land concentrates in few hands, taxes grow heavy, famine strikes, officials become corrupt, refugees begin to wander, the grassroots collapse, rebellions spread, and a new dynasty rises from the ashes. Over and over, from the end of the Qin to the end of the Han, from the Yellow Turban Rebellion to the fall of the Sui, from Huang Chao to Zhu Yuanzong, a beggar who became emperor, from Li Zicheng to the Taiping Rebellion. Chinese history repeatedly tells its rulers, you cannot squeeze ordinary people indefinitely. If they have no way to live, they will make a new dynasty for you. So China's people-centered language is not just modern political rhetoric. It has deep, bloody historical roots. Confucianism talks about the people as the foundation. The ancient Book of Documents says, the people are the root of the state. When the root is secure, the state is at peace. Mencius declared, the people are the most important. The state comes next. The ruler is the least. The Tang Emperor Taizong famously said, water can carry a boat, and it can also overturn it. The very fact that these sayings exist shows that rulers across Chinese history knew the terrifying power of the desperate bottom. This is the first principle of Chinese political tradition. You cannot treat people as mere consumables, because consumables, when gathered together, become history. So when Chinese people look at America, we are genuinely baffled. Your bottom is suffering like this. Why don't they rebel? They have so many guns. Why is there no uprising? Why can't the homeless, the uninsured, the addicts, the low-wage workers form political power? The answer is simple, but chilling. Guns are not revolution. Organization is revolution. America has guns, but its bottom is highly atomized, fragmented, divided, dispersed, and that is precisely the point. China's strict gun control is not because the Chinese are naturally docile. It is the opposite. Chinese history knows far too well what happens when grassroots violence becomes organized. The people on this land, when pushed to the brink, are not incapable of rebellion. They are terrifyingly capable. So our governance tradition has always contained a deep, structural fear of the bottom. We cannot allow massive bottom-level despair to gather. We cannot allow refugees to form political power. We cannot allow grassroots society to escape all state connection. We cannot allow ordinary people's suffering to accumulate past the breaking point. This is why China places such enormous importance on flood control, disaster relief, food security, grassroots governance, household registration, rural stability, public safety, transportation, education, and poverty alleviation. These are not merely good policies. They are the bottom-line logic of regime survival. If a Chinese government fails to keep ordinary people afloat over the long term, it is not only a moral failure. It is an existential political danger. This is the deepest difference between China and America. The American bottom is thoroughly fragmented, atomized, and funneled into identity politics. The Chinese bottom has repeatedly proven in history that when suffering accumulates, it can become a force for dynastic change. In America, the death of a bottom person is a statistic. In China, if the bottom cannot survive, the historical cycle comes knocking. That historical memory is a precious, terrifying civilizational legacy. So now, when you hear the Chinese government constantly speak of the people, common prosperity, a moderately prosperous society, poverty alleviation, you understand it is not just a slogan. The core legitimacy of the party is tied to enabling the people to live better lives. The Communist Party is not an aristocratic party, not a party of financial groups, not a coalition of local oligarchs. Its entire origin story, its revolutionary narrative, its governance story, is inseparable from the people. If the people do not live well, that narrative is damaged. That is why China builds high-speed rail to remote areas that will never turn a profit. Why it pushes electricity, internet, water, logistics, education, and healthcare down to the village level. It is not just engineering. It is political ethics made concrete. Poverty alleviation is not just an economic project. It is the state reintegrating the poorest into the modern life system. Common prosperity is not just a distribution slogan. It is a message to markets and capital. You cannot only create winners and throw the losers into the dark. Of course, the process is imperfect. There is formalism. There are mistakes. But you cannot deny the direction. Very few countries in world history have ever attempted, at the scale of 1.4 billion people, to dramatically reduce extreme poverty, to bring infrastructure to every county and village, to push the safety net down to the grassroots. It is not like America, where, if you fail, it's your personal problem. It is not like India, where, if you suffer, the next life will explain it. China's logic is heavier. This problem is so vast that the state must mobilize and handle it. That is China's greatness. Not that it has no problems, it has many, but that it still insists on an extraordinarily difficult direction. With so many people, you cannot let only the winners live well. America can let the losers disappear. India can let the losers be absorbed by a system of meaning. But China cannot easily do that. China must face them, register them, count them, organize them, build roads for them, supply electricity, build schools, connect the internet, and provide a safety net. That is the weight of a high organization civilization. That is the weight of China's political ethics. So when Chinese people look at America, what should rise in us is not cheap superiority. It should be a renewed understanding of our own civilizational mission. We cannot become America. But here is where we must be honest with ourselves. Just because our civilization rejects the logic of disposable people does not mean that logic isn't growing inside China right now. You see it in the 35-year-old crisis, where workers are deemed too old for the job market before they hit middle age. You see it in credentialism, in last-place elimination, in brutal KPI pressure, in platform algorithms that treat delivery drivers as replaceable parts. You see it in precarious employment, in the in-house competition we call Najuan, in young people crushed by mortgages, car loans, bride prices, education costs, and endless workplace competition. While our political ethics says ordinary people cannot be thrown away by the system, our markets, our platforms, our performance metrics are starting to whisper, if you don't measure up, you fall behind. America's problem is that the capital platform openly eats people. China's danger is that the high organization system may, under the immense pressure of development, unconsciously crush people into indicators. America lets the market say, you're useless, get off. China's danger is letting the system say, you're not good enough, you fall behind. The former is cold cruelty. The latter is a heavy, grinding weight. So we cannot just mock America. What we truly must guard against is letting the American-style disposable logic, dressed up in the language of efficiency, performance, growth, optimization, competition, and flexible employment, grow roots inside China. Once China begins to believe that it's normal for the bottom to be eliminated, normal for young people to be crushed by debt, normal for the middle-aged to be discarded by the workplace, normal for ordinary people to be squeezed dry by algorithms, normal for losers to have no value. Then China would not just resemble America. China would have become America. And that is the scariest outcome. What is truly great about our civilization is not that it has solved all problems. It's that its historical tradition, its political ethics, and its national narrative do not permit it to openly declare that people are consumables. That gives room for correction. As long as the word "the people" remains at the center of political ethics, as long as common prosperity, poverty alleviation, grassroots governance, public services, rural revitalization, education, healthcare, and social security are still seen as the state's responsibility, as long as the state still acknowledges that the improvement of ordinary people's lives is its source of legitimacy, then China still has the chance to keep pulling back the market and the performance machine. That is the most hopeful thing about China. Not that there is no risk, but that we still possess the civilizational and political resources to fight that risk. America's problem is that after the capital platform eats people, it can often just say, "That was a free choice." China's problem is that if the system crushes people, it will still be forced to face a question: does this deviate from the people? That question itself is China's moat. In our next episode, we'll take a sharper turn. We'll look at why America so naturally produces cyberpunk visions, high-tech, low-life, and why it functions so effectively as a global screening machine, seducing the world's strongest while discarding the weak. And we'll explore how our own information cocoon shapes the way we see all of this. This is the America Mirror. I'll see you next time.